Good morning, everybody, and firstly I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we meet today, and being the Turrbal and the Yagara people, I also acknowledge that there are a number of parties that are joining us online from our regions across Australia. I would also like to acknowledge their traditional owners and custodians and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Aaron from the Nunako Yagara Aboriginal Dance Company for a didgeridoo performance. Please join me in a round of applause. Thank you, Aaron. So good morning, our elders, seniors, and all of those of you who have joined us today. Our distinguished guests, which are all of us. My name's Kieran Chilcott. I'm a Yugambeh Bundjalung man who's grown up on Yugambeh country, the lands of the Kumbameri people on the Gold Coast. I'm a husband and a father first, but I'm also the CEO of Cowan Development Corporation, the Aboriginal community-controlled health service on the coast, and a director at CheckUP here. I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for joining us to celebrate National Reconciliation Week this week. I'd also like to acknowledge my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters who are joining us online and those who are in the room with us today, and some of those you'll hear from shortly. We have about 60 people joining us online, so I encourage them to add into the chat where they're from and where they're joining us from today. And any questions that come along, the CheckUP staff will be monitoring that. Before we jump into some of our presentations and guest speakers, I guess it's probably important for me as a director of CheckUP to give you a bit of an understanding of where we're at and where we've come from and why we're here today. Yeah, and in line with the theme of National Reconciliation Week. Unity, equity, self-determination, empowerment, action, change, wisdom, representation, learning, love and truth-telling. Be a voice for the generation. This week is a time for all Australians to learn about National Reconciliation Week, but reconciliation every day of our lives. And for us, I'm proud to be standing here representing CheckUP as a director and having the opportunity to yarn with some of our inspirational and dedicated Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander individuals who have embodied this theme, not this week, but their entire lives. This year's theme encourages all Australians to be a voice for reconciliation in a tangible way. So it's not only the responsibility of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we encourage each and every one of you as supporters and, a lot of people say allies, I say accomplices, because when I'm sitting behind bars, I don't want to be sitting there with just black fellas championing our cause. I want my accomplices to be there supporting us each and every day in what we're here to achieve. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the CheckUP board, our CEO Anne-Marie Liddy and the entire CheckUP team for not only allowing me to use my voice, but also in turn using theirs to make a difference in the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So as we celebrate 25 years of CheckUP this year, I take the opportunity to acknowledge an organisation that has continued to evolve. We have implemented strategies to strengthen the way in which we work with mob, and we have deliberately chosen to walk alongside our brother and sister Aboriginal community-controlled health services. We have member representation from Quake, Ayui, Atsix Mackay, Gundir and Wuchopran, and I acknowledge all of the other Aboriginal community-controlled organisations that support what we do, either as a provider of our services or those who come along and support the events that we hold. The relationship between CheckUP and Quake has been particularly strong over the past decade, and not only as a result of our co-location, but our board, our executives and our teams have deliberately fostered relationships. And I acknowledge Quake for allowing us to utilise this training space today. It is through these relationships that meaningful change can occur. Our relationship with Quake was further strengthened and enhanced in November with the signing of a new MOU, and we look forward to many years of working alongside Quake to making a difference throughout our communities. So over the past couple of years, the board have made some critical decisions that have been able to strengthen the voice of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Firstly, an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee was established as a subcommittee of the board, a subcommittee that was able to provide a direct voice to our board. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee provides strategic, high-level guidance to the CheckUP board and senior management in relation to CheckUP's broader programs and broader remit. We also have the ability to effectively engage, plan and coordinate and the implementation of initiatives that are specifically for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And the importance of being able to establish this subcommittee was to be able to ensure that our team, who with all good intent, were able to deliver on what were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander principles. Today we will hear from some of those deadly advisory committee members who are here with us in person. CheckUP also took the initiative to self-fund an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health lead role, and this role has contributed to strengthening and sustaining strong productive relationships between CheckUP and our communities, our community organisations, and internally being able to support the ambitions of the organisation through the senior management team. So working closely with the CEO and other members of the leadership team, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health lead has provided high-level, timely and strategic advice on current and emerging issues that are impacting on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I acknowledge Lynette Anderson, who joins us here online, and looking directly at you, Lynette. We will hear from Lynette very shortly. A decade ago, in 2013, CheckUP started the Reconciliation Action Planning journey by launching its first RAP, moving through the stages to an Innovate RAP in 2016, focusing on activities around reconciliations, Australia's themes of respect, relationships and opportunities. And I acknowledge those who will talk to that RAP journey for them later on through this piece. Additionally, there's been an increasing number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health consumers in our rural and remote footprint, and CheckUP looks for opportunities to employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to support the development of culturally safe services in a more inclusive workspace, providing diverse perspectives. So being able to recruit new talent to the organisation that are place-based is something that's really important to us. We've also partnered with the Indigenous Allied Health Australia and commenced the delivery of their cultural responsive training and have been able to start to roll this out across communities. We've strengthened that locally placed coordination position in Aboriginal communities, and this is evident by the work that we're doing in Moreton Island and Palm Island. They never said it was going to be easy, but it has certainly been worth it. A lot of what has been achieved today has been part of the hard slogs to get us here, and I think we all know what those battles feel like. We also acknowledge that there is still a journey to walk, and that is part of what weeks like this allow us to have, is a platform to utilise our voice. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, non-Indigenous people, please champion what we do and how we do it, and support what we do in terms of being able to make a difference for those most vulnerable. I'm actually going to finish with a quote that I combined, so I don't know whether it means I made this quote up because I combined it, but it's actually a quote by Samuel L. Jackson and Kate Cole. And so it goes like this: if you have the opportunity to use your voice, you should use it, because if you don't, there'll be someone behind you waiting. And so we want to make sure that those people who are using their voice are using it right. So I thank you for allowing me to open up today's celebration. As we segue into our first yarn, we will... You can give me a round of applause. Brought you some time, Mary. What's happening today?
Today we're doing pretty amazing work, actually. Well, Dr. Todd is. He's helping First Nation people who live rurally, remotely, who don't usually have access to like surgery, and eyesight is pretty important, I must say. So I think it's pretty special.
I came to Cairns for my eye, cataract. I want to see, because I'm doing tourists. I got my own family, Walker family tour. I was annoyed because I couldn't see. Because I want to show the people what bush medicine and what bush money we used to collect. But from after this, the doctor fixed me up. I think it's a miracle for me to go back and teach Bama and Weibo to learn both ways, my way and your way. Surgery went really fine, really fast. The people in there are very kind, gentle, very helpful, and in there and out again. And I was so thankful to all of them, because when I seen all the people in there, it was like Bama, Aboriginal people, and Weibo together are working and helping. I am very pleased that it's going to work, because I want to do my night walk, taking the tourists, working together. Thank you. Thank all my specialists for their appreciation, and I love to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year till we meet again one day. God bless.
So our first guest speaker joining us online today is none other than the deadly Lynette Anderson. So Lynette joined CheckUP in 2022 as our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health lead. So could you please join me in a warm round of applause as we welcome Lynette online. And rather than shame her out with this big long bio, I might have a nice yarn with Lynette and ask,
do that, Kieran.
ask Lynette to maybe talk to us about your bio, Lynette. You've done some pretty amazing things in your lifetime, and we're very fortunate enough to have you here with us at CheckUP. But what's that journey been like for you?
Thanks, Kieran. Hello, everybody. So it has been a long journey, but it's been, picking up on some of your words earlier, it's been a very rewarding journey, and one that I probably wouldn't change anything for. So I guess my journey started way back in 1988. Can I just ask, can you hear me? Because I couldn't hear the didgeridoo, and I couldn't see what was happening next, so I'm a bit disorientated. Anyway, so my journey started back in 1988 in health, when I did my nursing training in a little rural hospital in Charters Towers. And I guess I always knew that I was going to be in health. I watched my mum, who was a nurse and was actually the first Aboriginal health worker out at Hughenden. So I was born and bred in Hughenden. And I am a Wakai woman from North Queensland here. So spent all of my time working rural and remote. So spent many years working in all the hospitals between Charters Towers, Hughenden, right out to Mount Isa. And then in 2003, I moved my family to Townsville, and from 2003, I spent the next 18 years working in the community controlled health sector and spending my time between TARS, the Townsville Aboriginal Health Service here in Townsville, and Quake. So again, that was a really long 18 years, but again, very rewarding, and I don't think I would have changed that for the world. So much experience gained along the way.
Thanks, Lynette.
And I guess, that experience come from having clinical roles as well as management roles. So, yeah.
So I guess that leads me into why CheckUP? Why CheckUP, and why have you chosen CheckUP as a vehicle to amplify your voice?
I guess CheckUP, I was aware of CheckUP through my work through the archo sector, and again, for me, it's really important that I'm doing work that is meaningful and has purpose for me and aligns with my values and interests, and CheckUP gave me all of that. I was able to, my two passions in my work life are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health and rural and remote, and also workforce development in those rural areas. So CheckUP gave me all of those opportunities. So I was really excited to come on board a few years ago as a regional coordinator, looking after what I felt like was my old neighbourhood anyway in the northwest Queensland, and then progressed into the role that I'm in today. So coming to CheckUP, in terms of being able to use my voice, I think it gives me an opportunity and an avenue to raise awareness internally about issues that are faced by our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and mob, so that those issues are taken into consideration when we're engaging and when we're undertaking our health service planning and allocating funding, so that we're ensuring that distribution is where it's needed the most. I'm able to do this by sharing my knowledge and my lived experience with my colleagues, and as well as part of our decision-making process. I feel like I'm a real valued member of that decision-making process internally here at CheckUP. I think that along with my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues here in CheckUP, which there's 5 of us here now, it allows us to amplify the voices of our mob in communities by sharing what we're hearing when we're out and about. We're able to get out into the communities that we need to go and hear from. So we're able to bring their voices back and ensure that they're heard again within our decision-making processes. So I think that CheckUP just felt like the right fit for me.
Oh, you mentioned something about funding and working with service providers. What does that actually mean in terms of CheckUP and what CheckUP offers? And I guess the suite of services and programs, are you able to just provide us, I guess, a really brief overview of what that actually is for our people?
In terms of what CheckUP offer?
Yeah, like program-wise and, the distribution of funding. What does that mean?
Yep, so I guess CheckUP are the funds holder of the MOICDP, which is the Medical Indigenous Outreach or the Chronic Disease Outreach Program. So, you know, when we are the only funds holder of that, it's really important that we have our systems and processes in place to ensure that that funding is aligned and distributed fairly to again, like I said, the communities that that needed the most. And I think that again, it was refreshing coming to CheckUP to see how those processes are managed, and being part of that was what's really important to me. So again, that was a draw card as well.
And what about oh yeah, sorry, no, continue.
No, you go.
No, I guess probably, you know, from your perspective and the work that you've done, being in and out, and a mixture of clinical and non-clinical, and having that grassroots, I guess, contact with mob. What is the Lynette takeaway message? What is something that, you know, you've got this opportunity to use your voice, and we've got, you know, people online and people in the room. What would you say to everybody here? Yeah,
I think and keeping, I guess, my take-home message in keeping it in line with Reconciliation Week, and like you said, using your voice for generations. I think my take-home message for everyone would be that reconciliation shouldn't be just seen as a one-time event practiced just on Reconciliation Week. It needs to be approached as an ongoing effort, and I think that we need to make sure that our actions don't just stay here at our gathering or in our workplaces. We need to extend that, you know, from our workplaces and our social circles to have the most impact, and really make sure that we're moving forward, so that generations ahead of us don't have the long, hard slog that we've had.
Lynette, take a big breath out. We survived. Lynette asked me to be kind to her. I think I was kind.
Yeah, you was, yeah.
Yeah. I said, no presentation. We want to have a yarn. And I think I thank you for your honesty and being candid with us today, and being able to have this chat and share your wisdom with everyone. And I encourage you to continue to use that big voice of yours, even though it gets real tough when nobody else is around.
Proper,
It does. But yeah, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Lynette. And now we're going to share a video about Lynette's mentoring work in CheckUP.
Do you want to talk to that before we share it?
Yeah, go on.
I think, and probably should have mentioned this earlier too, coming to CheckUP, for me, transitioning into an organisation like CheckUP was quite difficult, and I really struggled for probably 6 months of that time. Don't know why, because, you know, everybody was welcoming and really encouraged me to use my voice when I came in. But I think I slowly got there. Like I said, it took a fair while, but as our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff numbers grew, I also was observing the hesitation in them that I had already you know, gone through. So with the leadership team and Anne-Marie, who were really encouraging of me to develop a mentoring program internally, I think that that's gone a long way to ensure that we still have those staff with us today, because they come from similar backgrounds that I did, and you know, we were used to being big fish in a little pond, and we're coming to CheckUP, we were the little fish, and we were a little bit scared and shame and, you know, all that, but we got through that, and I think that our mentoring program has a real impact, and I think that that's the reason why we still have some of them deadly mob with us today. So yeah, Anne-Marie had an idea that we should put that to video, and we did. And luckily today that you will only just see the video, because if we were to do a bloopers video, truly, no good viewing. So yeah, hope you enjoy our video.
Thanks, Lynette. Now we will see a video on mentoring from...
Hi, my name's Lynette Anderson. I'm a Wakai woman from North Queensland, currently living in Townsville, and I am the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Lead at CheckUP. For the last 12 months, I've been working with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff here at CheckUP just to ensure that they are feeling really comfortable within the organisation and helping with their transition from previous workplaces. It's really important that here at CheckUP we are providing and offering a mentoring program to ensure that staff that we bring into the organisation we keep for the long term. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff really do bring a wealth of knowledge and information and lived experience to our organisation that allows us to ensure that we do become a more culturally competent and responsive workplace.
It's made me feel more comfortable having mentoring because of the fact that I know that there's someone there that I can turn to that has gone through exactly the same thing that I've gone through, like coming into like a different organisation, different atmosphere. I know that Lynette has my back. Like I know that I can speak to her freely, like if I come across any issues. And basically I know that we've got that like in a network now where I can speak freely to the other, like not only just Indigenous people in the organisation, I can speak freely to anybody because like we're actually all on the same page. Mentoring also leads to upskilling leads to succession planning, things like that. So I think the mentoring goes hand in hand with them. I think it's essential, it's an essential thing that all organisations should be participating in.
Working with Lynette has been great. It's really made us closer and built a good relationship with us, especially being able to sit in the Townsville office with her and having that one-on-one interaction all the time. I've learned a lot from Lynette, especially with my engagement skills. We do so much stakeholder and provider engagement that sometimes it's confronting, and she's helped build those relationships and make the transition and meetings very comfortable. Mentoring has made me feel more confident in my job because I've built skills and learned stuff about myself that I didn't know before, and I know that I have someone to rely on if things do get tough or I need to talk about something.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are underrepresented in most workplaces and organisations across the country, so anything that enables them to feel valued and safe within the workplace will go a long way in ensuring that they continue to contribute to the organisation. So it really is a powerful strategy for any organisation.
At CheckUP, we're committed to creating an inclusive and diverse workplace, and our mentoring program is one way that helps us to achieve that goal. We know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff who come to work in our organisation can sometimes face unique challenges, and our mentoring program is one way of supporting them to work through some of those challenges. I'd like particularly to thank Lynette for her work in initiating this program and for sharing her time and expertise with us. I'd also like to thank and congratulate those staff who are participating in the program. Finally, I'd like to encourage other organisations to think about adopting a similar program. By developing programs like this, together we can build more inclusive and diverse workplaces.
Our next speaker today, I've had the fortunate experience to be able to represent on a domestic and family violence committee with him. He's also an outreach provider and can provide a perspective from that angle. A talented man, and I'm going to do you proud with your bio. We have Ed Mosby who's joined us today, and he was born in Zenith-Kes, Torres Strait Island, on Waian, also known as Thursday Island. Traditional land and seas of the Kareg people. However, his family connection and home is Mosby, also known as York Island. The traditional land and seas of the Massagalgal people. Ed holds full registration as a general psychologist and is currently a senior psychologist and owner of Waian Healing. Previously, he has worked in both state and state government mental health services and Indigenous community-based organisation. Ed is an independent director at ANROS. He is a member of the Australian Indigenous Psychologists Association and the Australian Psychologist Society. Edward specialises in working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families in the areas of mental health, social and emotional wellbeing, community safety, trauma, grief, loss, family and domestic violence. In his downtime, he loves boating and playing and watching sports with his wife and kids. Please put your hands together for Ed.
Chatting together. Do you want to chat? I don't know, do you? Oh, no, all good. Thank you, Kieran. Great to see you again. Much appreciated. First of all, I just want to pay my respects and acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples and thank them for the welcome this morning as well and the acknowledgement. I also want to acknowledge our elders in the room today and also want to acknowledge a number of service providers that are here as well. And pay my respects to all the work that everybody's doing initially. Want to again pay respects to both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and also non-Indigenous Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Want to acknowledge the work of CheckUP, and I'll tell a bit of a quick yarn about that. I think I've got 15 minutes, is that right? 15 minutes, I'll time that because I could talk on this stuff all day. Anne-Marie, I just want to acknowledge the work that your organisation does with Quake, alongside with Quake and that partnership. As a Wakai Waian Healing is a mental health service. It's a private company, so it's not a community-controlled organisation, but it is 80% staffed by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we do have reference groups and that. But observing the work of CheckUp and Quake is something that we do as a service provider. And so I just want to acknowledge your board that's here today and also the work that you have been doing. I want to acknowledge the PHNs that are in the room as well. As a community, as a private company, it's been a bit of an interesting journey. At one point in time, I was quite happy just to be sitting in my office doing my private practice, having lunch and working short hours and whatnot was great. And then to just highlight a couple of things, our relationship with CheckUp actually started back in July of 2015 with an email from Susan Dixon Grover asking me to do a one-day trip into Gladstone, and which then grew into a one-day-a-month visit to Palm Island, which today, thank you to the reminder about my late LVRs, whoever sent me that, is now up to 346 visits to locations across 8 different sites in a 12-month period. So that translates into thousands of visit days and thousands of, tens of thousands of actually sessions by the clinicals, by our site and our mental health worker team. So that's been a really interesting journey because it sounds great, over that period of time it all transitions, but it doesn't happen just smoothly. There is a lot of negotiation and there are frictions and there are things that have to be worked through. And working with a number of organisations, I would say working with CheckUp in that space, if we want to talk about reconciliation, has been a real process. There have been multiple phone calls that I've had with the CheckUp team about, I go to a site, I see a number of things and these are opportunities that exist, and say, look, this is something we can cause and effect in this location. And then for them to go away, come back and go, yep, rightio Ed, let's make this happen. And I will regularly say that there's been multiple, in terms of, I'm not a big fan of bios, not a big fan of going through the list of achievements and stuff like that. But I probably need to take the opportunity to say that the work that CheckUp has done with supporting our organisation, and we come across a number of organisations that are supported by CheckUp, which is great, that sort of work has supported the establishment of domestic violence services, of this enhancement of social and emotional wellbeing teams, the establishment of services that never existed. I'm not saying it's because they occurred because we were there, But if it did have something to do with that, us being there was supported by CheckUP and the staff at CheckUP tolerating my annoyance about, wanting to get things done and do things. And so I think that's a bit of a success story. So in terms of so that's a little bit about our relationship with CheckUP. In terms of the work and reconciliation being Reconciliation Week, absolutely agree that reconciliation is something that's an ongoing process. I think there's a big portion, our work is in the space of healing. Do I generally believe that we all have some healing to do? Absolutely. Do I believe in the words of an old fella up north that said, in order to understand where we're going into the future, we must understand how we got to be where we are today? Absolutely believe that, see that every day. That's one of the guiding principles that we have in our organisation. So in the organisation itself, that's the mentoring. And so we purposefully have a mixture of, so we're a culturally grounded, trauma-informed service. So that means that we have a mixture of clinicians. We have males, females, older people, younger people, people that identify as Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, and people that don't. So internally we have to go through a process of reconciliation as well, where we see this process of clinicians learning about, when you look at 8 sites, I think it's 28 or 32 language groups we sit across and visit, and the variation with sites is huge. So the supervision that we run internally to our team has a lot of depth in there. When you hear sayings from non-Indigenous clinicians that are going to sites for a long time and they talk about the uncomfortableness that they have, then to transform and then move to a space after a while where they go, it's really hard to leave because they develop that connection. So those sorts of processes are things about reconciliation, and I think the work going to visits and doing a number of sites, we're a really privileged organisation, and the work we do is really privileged. We're not selling t-shirts and ice creams, we're generally talking about some of the most sensitive things in people's lives. And so would I say that in terms of reconciliation, that is it a two-way street? I think it is a two-way street. I think there's learning that goes both ways. Do I think that in order to understand how we got to be where we are and where we're going into the future, yes, I do think that's really important. I think there are many voices. In terms of on the ground, I know there's been some discussions around, go to some of the, and most of the communities that we visit with the support of CheckUP are remote or very remote locations, which adds another dimension for those other service providers that are doing that work. And I take my hat off to you because it's hard work. It is hard work. It's a new dimension on your professions. In terms of the common themes that sort of come through is, I think, a desire. So going back to on the ground, when we talk about the voice, if we'll just talk about the voice and the voice in Parliament, a number of people in the community, because it's coming up, it's starting to be surfing as conversation. Like we're referred for a particular reason, anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc., but this is coming up and it's a voluntary discussion. It's not a question that you've got to ask every consumer that you see. So it's coming up, so it's being discussed. And so there's discussions around, the voice and the voice in Parliament, what's that? What is that? And so, yeah, there is some, I'm not really sure what that is. Who is that? What does that do? But when you talk about the processes and the principles of having a voice and autonomy and being empowered, it speaks really strongly. And there is a desire for that. There is a desire for that, particularly, and if we look at trauma or healing, the desire to have a say and to desire to have some control over one's life or the life of generations to come or influence that is a huge part of healing. And so in terms of reconciliation, I think bringing the awareness, am I sort of curious about what the results are going to be for Australia or this country? I am very curious about it. Something that probably comes through from, and I would see, and my staff would see a variety of people in a variety of presentations, and they've got to come to us through a number of experiences. So, and some of them aren't great experiences. But there is one thing that another thing that comes out, and that is about unity and about coming together and about a process of understanding each other. And I think the togetherness sort of aspect of it is really important for a way forward. So in terms of the reconciliation work, and a lot of this learning, again, if I'd have sat in my office and just done my private practice, I probably wouldn't have as much of this, and I could talk on this all day. But in terms of what CheckUP has supported us in doing, and it hasn't just been clinical sessions. We have a mandate to deliver community capacity building and staff capacity building in every location and site that we go to, and that's a purposeful thing. And I'd like to say that that was all Ed Mosby's idea, but it wasn't all my idea. It was the mentoring that I received from my elders about the responsibility that we have for the generations that are coming into the future, just as they handed me responsibilities in the current, in the now. So yeah, I think in terms of, again, reconciliation week, or, you know, reconciliations every day, absolutely agree with that. I think the processes of healing is something that it's not easy. You know, being a realist, there are some people that are very uneasy about the referendum, that are very uneasy about the idea of reconciliation. And I think we just need to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge those people that are finding it uneasy as well. For me and our organisation, do we want to be with them, sit alongside them through that? Absolutely, we do. And so, yeah, thank you very much for your time. All the best for this week and all the best for the rest of the year. And yeah, have fun, enjoy it. Thank you.
Oh, look, give him one more round of applause. Thank you. I didn't. I had a series of questions in case you didn't have anything to say, but looks like you've covered it. Look, and thank you so much for your time today. I think it's really special that the audience here and those online got the opportunity to hear from Ed and someone that's doing our community and our people proud in community. And we thank you, you know, from the bottom of our hearts, the work that you actually are doing in that trauma and healing space. The next part of today is an opportunity for us to hear from our deadly Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee. And as I said earlier, this is a subcommittee of our board, and when the decision was made to establish and stand up this subcommittee, I was one Aboriginal director, and the 6 non-Indigenous directors of CheckUP became the biggest champions for this subcommittee, and was something that was quite moving and made me quite proud, because my voice in the conversation was so overpowered by the support and sentiment of my co-directors in establishing this committee. So in drawing up the terms of reference, we wanted to ensure that we had a committee that was gender diverse, that was geographical diverse, that we had a mix of age and experience, and we've been really fortunate to be able to have some dedicated individuals who have volunteered their time to be a part of what has been our inaugural Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee. I have 2 apologies today, one from Sean Tatipata, who is an Aboriginal man from the Northern Territory, Indigenous eye health specialist, and someone who contributes widely to his community, and also Renee Blackman, who is the CEO of AICS Brisbane, but has held a role in Northwest Queensland, who started her training as a nurse and has worked her way through Aboriginal community controlled health services to be in her position today. I'm going to ask our two members who are here with us to come and join me on the lounges up here as I read their bios and not try and shame them out too much. But we are really fortunate, really lucky to have these people join us. So I'll first ask Auntie Rona Scherer to come up, who is a Mamu Yalanji woman from far north Queensland living on Gubbi Gubbi country. Rona works across workforce in domestic and family violence, sexual assault and women's health and wellbeing sector through her senior project officer role in WorkUp Queensland, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mentoring program, a community of practice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander service providers, and collaborative grants program. So thank you. We'll give her a round of applause. The next person who's somebody who's actually been a mentor to me and somebody who I've looked up to during my time in this space. And I started as a very young CEO in the Aboriginal community controlled health sector 15 years ago. And Auntie Rhonda was also the CEO of the Aboriginal and Islander Health Service in Wakai. So can I ask you to join us as I read your bio? Auntie Rhonda's worked extensively throughout Queensland in executive management roles in the Community Controlled Health Service since 2008. Her role as the Chief Executive Officer of AT6 Wakai was a stepping stone into other health management roles and contracts in urban, rural and remote communities in Queensland. Auntie Rhonda was appointed as a Board of Director of the Torres and Cape Hospital and Health Service in 2019, and at the end of her 3-year appointment she was appointed again for another 4 years. However, resigned at the end of her last year as part of her transition to retirement, and we pulled her out. Although she's living remotely, Auntie Rhonda is still committed to being involved in addressing health issues for First Nations people and accepted the position on CheckUP Queensland's first Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee in November last year. Please join me in giving a welcome to Auntie Rhonda. Might come and join you on the couch. Look, I genuinely mean what I say when I say that you guys are lucky to be in the presence of these wonderful people who have made such a difference for our people and have actually used their voice to amplify the voices of those who haven't had the opportunity to use theirs. I guess I've got a couple of questions, and I think the first one's more around understanding your why and you're motivated to keep going. And I'll be really quite frank here, I'm a really harsh MC in that I don't like to provide people with the opportunity to review questions and stage responses. And I know that Aunt come in this morning, I'm like, I'll give you a little sneak peek, but and I thank you very, very much for putting up with me. But your why, like why are you here? Like why do you do what you do each and every day? Because we have tough roles that we play within communities, and what people don't understand is that our jobs we don't go home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When we choose to work in community, we live and breathe it, and our jobs are 24/7, 365 days a year. And what we see here are prime examples of that. And I just want people to understand what your why is and what's motivated you to continue. So I might throw over to Rona.
Yeah, sure. I guess my why is, it always is about my children, future generations, our mob who need that voice. So I've worked in health and community service organisations for, since I came back to the workforce after having my children. And it's always been satisfying to be able to help people into a process or into a service. Sometimes there's confusion, they don't understand, so it's really nice to be able to sort of help people through, through that sort of confusion and sort of know that what they want from that service. And I wear many hats, so I work for CheckUP Queensland, which is part of the Healing Foundation, and we work across the domestic family violence, sexual assault and women's health and wellbeing sectors. So it's been incredible. I've only been with them for about just over a year, and it's just been incredible to sort of see that sector and what it looks like. So we work with the workforce of that sector, and so it's a step away from actual dealing with victims and survivors. And I'm just in awe of the workforce that we do have, and we're there to look after them with their growing that workforce and connecting it and keeping their cup full, because each day they've got to wake up and go to that work. And they, particularly lately they've been dealing with the crisis, the rental crisis, so they've got to go to work with that kind of stuff hanging over their heads. So yeah, sorry, it's a little bit long-winded, but that is, knowing that we have an opportunity through my job to sort of help people, wake up each day and be able to face whatever challenges they have. The other hat that I wear is I've got like a side hustle, which we have cultural conversations with. Particularly, it's about making a cultural shift. So that's really important for me because I've been having these conversations for all of our life, really. So. And it's really interesting and it's heartwarming to sort of see the people, in whether they're working for early years or organisations and services in health and community service, really wanting to come to the service and with their hearts and helping our mob into their services, which is,
Yeah, I think the passion, it shines through, and I think that really sort of gives people an understanding of your why, and it's really evident, and the fire's still lit. And I'm now going to describe CheckUP as my side hustle. I think. Thank you. And Annie, I guess probably before I ask you to explain your why, you're our most remote member of the advisory committee. It might be good timing to give people an understanding of what your commitment is and how you got here today.
Thank you, Kieran. Firstly, I'd like to do the traditional protocols and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we've gathered here today. I didn't put in my bio there about my family background, so for my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families here, I make that cultural connect. On my mother's side, I'm part of the Barber family, our heritage from Duwan and Boygu Island in the Torres Strait, and on my father's side I'm part of the Dula family with connection to Erub, Darnley or Murray Island in the Torres Strait. I pay my respect to our elders past, present and emerging. In terms of the why, before I get to my story of how I get here, in terms of why, I think Ed touched on it before, that as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we are passed on the torch or responsibilities from our ancestors before, so that is to care and look after each other and care for our country, land and sea. So generationally we carry that through. So we are the current generation and the boys to make those positive changes so that our future generations don't have that struggle that our ancestors had to where we are today. In terms of commitment and remoteness, yes, I'm retired, semi-retired, and moved back home to the Torres Strait. So I live and work and run a business on Friday Island, which is remote. We lease 32 hectares of Friday Island, so we're a private island as such. That's just off Thursday Island. So in order to come and attend CheckUP Queensland meetings, or any meetings actually on the mainland, it means a 15-minute dinghy ride, firstly to get to Thursday Island, then a ferry and a bus to actually get to the airport, and then a plane trip to Cairns, and I had a 4-hour stopover in Cairns, which I managed to quickly duck into town and buy a jacket because we don't wear winter woolies on where I live. And then make the journey here. So arriving in Brisbane at around about 7:30 last night. So that's the journey for ourselves that live in remote communities, to demonstrate our commitment and passion in remaining involved and being a voice for our communities. So,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's telling in terms of commitment and genuine desire to give back. I think I was always looking forward to retirement until I met Auntie. But I guess once the fire's in the belly, I think there's no putting it out. And whilst sometimes there's a bit of petrol put in it and we flare up, it never goes. And I think that's what's been really evident. The next thing I just wanted to quickly explore was around reconciliation and touch on that word and that concept and basically what does that mean to you, like we've been on a journey. We've seen the hands on the lawn of Parliament and people come together for a week a year and really champion it. But what is reconciliation to you? And I might go to Auntie first around reconciliation.
Yeah, so again, common themes, I guess, amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Reconciliation is an ongoing, everyday process that we'd like to see non-Australians learn and understand our way of life, our specific needs in terms of health and social issues. It's something that never goes away, and like I said, although we've seen some significant changes and improvement to what our ancestors had, there's still a long journey to go. But I think together with the non-Indigenous persons taking the approach of wanting to learn and understand where we have been and where we need to go to keep our communities and our mob, our families strong, and the unity in terms of wanting to put the services and the funding and resources into the areas of priorities. I think that is a pathway to continued learnings in the space of reconciliation, and I thank each of you for coming today and being part of that learning journey with everyone that's heavily involved and has always been heavily involved in that process.
Did you was there anything to add?
Yeah, I guess it is always about change and change for the future. I've always had not an issue, but like a thing about the word reconciliation, because it often means about going back to a point where things were good, and you just sort of think, what was that point? So sometimes, I know in Australia we often leave off the word truth-telling when it comes to reconciliation. So sometimes reconciliation within an organisation or a service, there has to be a certain amount of that. And and so it's always good to have those conversations as a service or an organisation, as a community, as a nation, even as a state. We've sort of, it was a little bit concerning because we've heard the truth-telling commissions coming up, but the police themselves have, they're exempt from that process. Whereas that's, they're missing out on an opportunity to sort of bring forward, a really great change and for reconciliation in this country. Always means about heart as well. Sometimes people sort of approach this as a job, as part of their job description, but it's not. It's always about the heart of the person. So that's always something really interesting to look at. And the other sort of thing about it is that it's not just driven by Aboriginal people. So some services and organisations will see Aboriginal people sort of, to try and gather them. But when it comes from non-Aboriginal people, it's really
more powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because I my nan is 83 years old and still alive, the oldest person that's ever lived in her family. She had 4 brothers who died, before they were 60, and she doesn't like me saying the oldest person that's ever. She sounds like the oldest person that's ever lived. But in her family, she is, and I've had conversations over the years with her, and she's like, I don't like that word. Why do I have to reconcile with everybody? I didn't do anything wrong. But it's funny because she's the biggest champion for being able to bring people together and create an opportunity for shared understanding. And I think that's, for me, something key is, we've got the truth-telling element, but there's that shared understanding, the shared vision, and what that means for the next generation. If we can have a generation that comes after us that is more informed, taking advantage of the opportunities that sit at hand and being able to thrive, be prosperous and happy human beings, I think that we are all contributing to doing that job and doing that job really well. This sort of like draws me to my last question. I think that it's probably already covered, so I'm not going to ask it. I'm probably going to more so say I'd love to provide you with the opportunity to provide a final comment to the audience in terms of where you sit, and if there is any sort of strong message that comes from a personal or professional perspective that give you that opportunity. This is where I showed them questions and I asked different ones.
I guess, you know, like,
And don't beat around the bush. You tell them while they're
I'll
here,
tell you
and you
straight
tell them while they're online.
No, my history with CheckUP has gone back, I think, when I was working for Workforce Council back then. So we made a really good connection with Anne-Marie and David. There he is. And, you know, and so when I was asked to come on to this committee, it was an easy decision, because CheckUP are one of those organisations out there that really do things genuinely and not gammon, you know, because it's really important. And, like, you know, blackfellas for over the centuries, you know, we haven't had a good, over the decades, not centuries I suppose, we haven't had a good relationship with health in this country. So you guys are really doing great work in being able to get to those remote communities and helping our mobs with, you know, the programs that you guys run, that CheckUP runs. So, you know, just keep up that work. You know, you know, it's just making sure that all that knowledge that we all bring that to this community, from the communities to CheckUP, knowledge and skills, and being that connecting piece between those mobs that can't sort of don't have that voice, being able to advocate for people, you know. So your organisation, like CheckUP, I keep thinking you're working for CheckUp, but
I work for you.
yeah. But yeah, so you know, and it's what was I going to say? Yeah, just you know, keep putting your heart into your position, your roles, because that's what really counts for our people, to sort of, when they meet you, they know that you are genuine and you putting that heart into the reconciliation process. So
I like what you said in terms of you know, be the voice for those who don't have one. But we've also having the opportunity to empower people to use their voice is really, really important.
Yeah, I think probably the take-home message, if anything, is that, like I said before, reconciliation journey is a two-way street, in terms of we all have a learning process and needing to understand each other's role and responsibility, I guess, in our communities through work and family lifestyle. So in the remote communities, for service providers particularly, and for ourselves as elders and leaders in the community, what we say and how we behave has a long-term impact. You may not think of it in that space, but if a service provider that's going in, and if a community person has a not so nice experience, that has a lasting impact on whether they will access services of any sort that comes into the community. In terms of remoteness, yeah, I'm remote, but I couldn't hide from Miss Lynette. She found me. But after Lynette giving me an overview of CheckUP, and I've known Anne-Marie since she started in her role, and looking around the room, I see a few other familiar faces through Quake that I've been, you know, fortunate and blessed to be associated with throughout my career time. But in terms of CheckUP Queensland and what they stand for and how they provide their services, there is that genuine commitment. I was very happy with the terms of reference that I was provided in to consider coming onto this committee, the initiatives that Lynette has brought to the role, and having met with the board and for our first face-to-face and my first initial meeting, I could feel that sense of genuine and commitment through the words and the actions of the board of directors on that day. And that's an example of what I mean by what you say and how you behave does have a long-term impact on people. So CheckUP has achieved quite a lot during its establishment, and due credit to the board of directors and Anne-Marie, the way they deliver and their services in community are actually making a difference to the lives of our people in the remote and rural community. So thank the board of directors for giving me the opportunity, and I look forward to working closely with the board into the future to provide that cultural lens, I guess, on the strategic direction, but also the operational level of CheckUP Queensland. So, thank you.
No, thank you for giving us the opportunity to work with you. And I guess probably before I wrap up my piece here, I'll have my 2 words, and I touched on it earlier. In terms of this journey and where we're going, I think for me, I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. Be our accomplice, and don't cheer for us, cheer with us. Don't bail us out, sit next to us, because we need to walk together alongside each other to genuinely, truly affect change and meaningful change, and be able to make the difference in the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, ultimately here in Queensland, but all over this country. Look, this session here wraps up my time as MC today, and I thank you all for being kind, and I thank those of you who are online. I'm actually going to go use my voice and amplify it over in 1 William Street for an 11:30 meeting that I wasn't able to change. And Tiana is my Uber, wherever Tiana is. The Uber's getting ready. But I guess in the genuine spirit of reconciliation, no better segue to hand over to the CEO of CheckUP, Anne-Marie, to take the MC button and continue with this event. And I appreciate everybody who's joined us online. I thank all of the guest speakers who have come candidly and honestly and have provided us with some meaningful insight around what this week means and what it means to be an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person in a urban, rural and very, very remote setting. And I hope that those of you who join us online and those of you in the room can take a bit of the fire that we have in our belly and share it and go like bushfires all over Queensland. So thank you everyone.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thanks everyone. Remind me never to be on an interview or other panel with Kieran. But can I just say again, thank you very much to Kieran and all the panellists so far. This morning it's really been a very spirit of generosity, of sharing and honesty that I think we've all found extremely valuable. So just a round of applause for the work today. As we've talked about, what we want to do now, I guess, is hear from some of our partners and member organisations. Many of you would be familiar that as we move along a reconciliation journey, some organisations choose to develop a reconciliation action plan as, I guess, a structured or a systematic way to think about how we as organisations approach our reconciliation journey and ensure that, I guess, that all aspects of reconciliation, including truth-telling and speaking from the heart, are really important and captured in that plan. Those of you who are familiar with the process of reconciliation action plans would know that there are a number of different levels. Some of that work is led by Reconciliation Australia, and I know there are a number of organisations across the health industry in Queensland who have a reconciliation action plan. Kieran mentioned in his introduction about CheckUP starting or developing our Innovate RAP in 2016. Last year in 2022 we were lucky enough to be able to launch our Stretch RAP, and we're just starting through that process of implementing our Stretch RAP. But we're going to hear from two organisations and two of our partners who are going to talk about their reconciliation journey through a reconciliation action plan. And I think first we're going to welcome Emma Griffiths from the Queensland Alliance for Mental Health, and then be followed by some presentations from colleagues at Darling Downs West Moreton PHN. So I'm going to introduce Emma first and hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie, and thank you very much for inviting the Queensland Alliance for Mental Health to talk about our RAP process and our plan. I'm Emma Griffiths. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications at the Queensland Alliance for Mental Health, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today here in person, the Jagera and Turrbal people, and pay my respects to Elders past, present and emerging, and to the First Nations Elders and people in the audience here today. I'm an Australian woman of Anglo-Celtic ancestry. Very keen now to be an accomplice and learning about how to do that. I was born in central west New South Wales on Wiradjuri land. I grew up here in Meanjin, and I've worked and lived in Sydney on the lands of the Eora Nation and in Canberra on Ngunnawal country. And I guess throughout my life I've considered myself fairly well educated and aware and observant, and most of my life I have not known which First Nations land I actually was on. So, small thing though it is, that's part of my personal learning journey. Today there are three main points I'd like to make about the Queensland Alliance for Mental Health's experience of working towards its first Reconciliation Action Plan, and the first one is, it's not that hard. The second one is, it's made a real difference to the way that we work. And the third one is, we know we have a long way to go, and we're embracing that. We're not daunted. So to that first point, that it's not that hard, I do admit to feeling daunted by the process when the organisation made the decision to start the RAP process. And I was pretty new to the organisation as well, but I learnt that law of small office dynamics, where if you're the one pushing for something to happen, then you're the one who's going to end up doing it. Thankfully, I wasn't the only one, so I had some solid help from our project and policy officer at the time, Sally McLeod, who sends her apologies today. But neither of us had ever worked on a RAP before. I had never prepared an organisational policy before. I don't really come from this world. I had never prepared a board report before. And when we embarked on this, the Queensland Alliance for Mental Health had a relatively new CEO. We had just experienced a major restructure. We had mostly new staff, and we had moved offices. There were 9 of us, including the EA and the business manager. And on top of that, we had a really big agenda for this new look alliance. We wanted to rebrand. We wanted to, we needed to build our new website. We had several new projects we knew were essential to our work. And it was when the new website was having its makeover that the question was asked, do we have a RAP? And no, we don't. And so, well, we need to do that too. So I think you would agree this is far from an ideal situation for an organisation to take on the job, but we did it, and still it was not that hard. And so I guess I feel like that's an important message to put across, particularly if you're in an organisation that has not yet embarked on a RAP process. Some key factors within our organisation that also made it a lot easier than what we had feared was that we had board support, we had CEO support, we had broad support from all staff. We're an organisation that social justice is right at the heart of, and we see reconciliation as right at the heart of social justice in Australia, or conciliation, I take that point. I suppose the only concern from staff was that in doing this, we wanted to make sure that it was not tokenistic, that yes, it was identified in the process of, oh, we don't have a RAP to put on our website, but, and that looks bad, but we don't want to do it just because of that. We want to do it because our hearts are really in it, and I really think our hearts are in it. We've all taken it pretty seriously. And then I think dealing with Reconciliation Australia, It's an incredible organisation, the way they have just stepped out the process. They couldn't make it any easier for you, really, to do. And having my colleague Sally McLeod as well, from our policy and project team, she wrote our RAP. I did a bit of editing and zhuzhing, and she just articulated our reasoning so beautifully. And so I just want to read a little bit from our RAP about that. So Sally wrote, "Embarking on a reconciliation process resonates strongly with our sense of social justice and working towards a fair and equal society. We know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are often overrepresented in mental health statistics. Concerningly, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples report that they are often treated poorly in mental health systems which are not delivering culturally appropriate models of care. Historical and ongoing colonisation, including the forced removal of children, lack of self-determination and structural racism, contribute to this. We believe, as the peak body representing the community mental health and wellbeing sector in Queensland, we have an obligation to be part of the process of righting these historical wrongs." So that is, the beginning of our RAP. That's genuinely what our organisation feels from the board down. I think I can fairly confidently say that. The next point that I wanted to make is that, yes, it has made a real difference to the way we work. We just had our Reflect RAP endorsed 2 months ago, so in March. But even before that, in preparing it, our whole team was exposed to the process because we had regular updates at our weekly team meetings, and we still do now as part of our commitment to ensure that the RAP process is followed. I brief our Director of Sector Engagement and Development, Sarah Childs, and our CEO, Jennifer Black, at our monthly leadership meetings where, I report to them on where we are with the commitments we've made. And Sarah Childs recently said to me, just, in conversation, that she really appreciated how having this RAP made it part of our daily work to think all the time of how we can be more inclusive of First Nations peoples and ideas, more respectful, and how it's raised our consciousness generally about the issues and the healing and the conciliation. And the beautiful thing too, Reconciliation Australia lays it out for you in its RAP requirements. It sets it out in a very logical, gradual, achievable way, and it shows that working towards reconciliation can be embedded in your daily work, and that's where it should be. We have a RAP working group now. It's just been set up. We have terms of reference, again, another thing that I'd never done before, so thank you, Reconciliation Australia, for helping me learn all this stuff. So part of my requirements to set aside time and energy to go to external reconciliation events, like this one. We seek out First Nations information relevant to our sector for our weekly newsletters that go out to our members throughout the state. And also in the process of preparing our Reflect RAP, it got the Alliance thinking in different ways and more broadly about what we could do. So separately to this, our board went through the process of bringing on a First Nations skills-based director. So we have AJ Doidge on our board now, and he's on our RAP working group as well. And QAMH has a board-approved statement of support for the voice process. It has a prominent place on our website. We've promoted through our newsletters and social media too, and we want to be an accomplice, an ally in supporting First Nations people through this, and hopefully showing some leadership in our sector if we can when we're at a Reflect RAP, but that's what we're working towards. So working towards, and that brings me to the third point, which is that we know we have a long way to go as an organisation. Like the country, we have a long way to go, I guess. Later this year, as part of our Reflect RAP, we'll be registering to advance to the second step in the process, an Innovate RAP. And we know that will push us to do more, to work towards greater First Nations representation in our organisation, better relationships with First Nations organisations, to develop strategies to better support First Nations peoples, and to look at our policies around recruitment and procurement. And I'm looking forward to hearing the next presentation so that I can get some tips. I want to end on possibly, just in terms of the process, it was one of the more challenging aspects, but gosh, so rewarding, and that was commissioning the art to go with our RAP. And my colleagues here have a little postcard that we've prepared earlier, if you want to send that along the lines for people. And apologies if you're joining us online, but it is on our website, which is qamh.org.au. It's not a requirement to have art as part of your RAP, but when I started looking around, everybody did, and they're so beautiful. It's like, please, boss, can we have some money to commission some art? So that's what we did, and I'd like to thank my communications colleague, Kristen, as well, Kristen Culpepper, for helping us find our artist, because when we did connect with Chloe Wadago, it was a beautiful thing. Chloe had worked in our sector. It was her first RAP to work on as well. So we now have this beautiful piece of art on our wall, and it also serves as a reminder every day that we're an organisation now that's in this process. And yeah, we're proud of that. We know we have a long way to go, but it feels really good to have begun. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you. I agree. It's really beautiful artwork. Look forward to seeing it where it's hanging. Or I'd love to do that. And I think I would reflect on some of the points that you made in terms of CheckUp's own RAP journey, that I do think it's very much ongoing. It doesn't stop and start with, oh, now we've done the RAP and that's the end of it. That's where it starts. And that's where it continues to go. But I think one of the most rewarding parts of our reconciliation journey has been that opportunity to better understand, value and share Aboriginal culture. And that's been, I think, very meaningful for our organisation, not just art, but also music, food and other things. And I think that's one of the valuable things that having a RAP does, is that it requires and encourages you to understand more around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, not just about how it applies in your work, in your day-to-day work. It's about becoming engaged and understanding the beauty of that culture. So now with that, I'd like to invite Louise and I think Todd from Darling Downs, West Moreton, Primary Health Network. Thank you very much for making the journey and being here with us today, and we really look forward to hearing your presentation and insights. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to CheckUp for inviting us along to talk about our Innovate RAP today. So as Anne-Maria said, my name is Todd Williams and I'm the Director of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health with Darling Downs, West Moreton PHN, and Louise is our Director of Stakeholder Engagement and Communications, and together we co-chair our Reconciliation Action Plan. Oh, okay. Do you want to click? Yep. I'll break it. I'm good at breaking things. So before I begin, I just want to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of the land which we're on today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also extend the respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are joining us here in the room and online, and commit to a future with reconciliation at its heart. So PHNs were established in 2015, or Primary Health Networks, and we are one of 31 around the country that is funded by the Federal Department of Health. Darling Downs and West Moreton PHN is tasked with undertaking extensive population health planning to identify service gaps and development of local strategies to meet these needs. This is achieved in collaboration with general practice, the primary health sector, our hospital and health services, the social sector and the community. Where gaps exist, our role as the PHN is to commission healthcare services from healthcare providers throughout our region. Our PHN currently implements the federal government 7 key priority areas, being Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, aged care, population health, mental health, health workforce, digital health, and alcohol and other drugs for targeted work. And the PHN also provides feedback on these services to the government around specific healthcare, which would assist in planning for future health services in our region. So our PHN, Darling Downs and West Moreton, we have 2 hospital and health services, one being Darling Downs and the other one being West Moreton. It's pretty obvious. And it's around 99,000 square kilometres, and we cover 12 LGAs. So we have major communities in Ipswich and Toowoomba, and then we have surrounding communities located in the Lockyer Valley, Scenic Rim, Somerset, South Burnett, Cherbourg, Southern Downs, Gundawindi, and the Western Downs LGAs. We also do have some communities that are in the Banana, Shire and Brisbane LGA. And on the slide, you'll see there's some of our health profile, and there's more in-depth data on our health needs assessment on our website. So we have about 33,000 people that identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander in our region, which is about 5% of that population. And you can see there that some of our health stats are 96% of healthcare provided by local GPs, 59% have chronic conditions, 20% have mental health concerns, and 7% have diabetes. And we have an estimated 2% of the local workforce that identifies Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our region. So this brings us to our Innovate wrap and where we are today. So
thank you.
Do that bit.
Thank you. Our journey, we did do a Reflect wrap to start with. We're now onto the Innovate wrap. Personally, this is my second wrap. I've done a stretch wrap before, so I'm working backwards the way we've done things. We really have a vision to make sure that there is equitable and equal access for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to health in our region, right across our region. And as Todd showed you the map, we incorporate Cherbourg in our region. We also support people in Boggabilla and Toomalo who are just over the border and not quite in our region, but we extend the hand of friendship there across to Gundawindi to make sure that people have access to health. And we also have significant Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities within Ipswich and Toowoomba, so people who may not live on country but really still need culturally supported services. And we, my role as stakeholder engagement as well as on the RAP committee is to make sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a voice, and it's fabulous that that's the theme for this year's Reconciliation Week and NAIDOC, but really our job is to make sure people have a voice all the time, every day, that they feel comfortable using that voice, and if they don't feel comfortable using that voice, that they can come through us or somewhere else to use their voice. And I actually want to acknowledge Melissa Fox, who's sitting here, because we've really upped our game with Health Consumers Queensland this year to really make sure in all of the consultation work we do, our Talk About campaigns, that we specifically target and give safe spaces for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to express their needs and their concerns about our health system. So that's the way we do our business, and our RAP is a reflection on the way we do our business, and our business is a reflection on our RAP. So both documents, our Reconciliation Action Plan and our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Equity Health Strategy, feed each other, and then both of those inform our strategic plan. So our business is making sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have access to health. And really a lot of it is about getting out of the way and making sure that people are funded to determine their own needs, not being patronising or paternal or saying this is the way you need to do this. We have seen our best outcomes across our region when we've got out of the way and we've said, okay, you lead it, here's some money, we'll support you, go for it. And we're starting to see some really good actions from that. The region, we have co-chairs of our RAP committee, and our RAP committee sits across our whole region, from our executive leadership team to our receptionist actually sits on it. So our whole organisation sits on. We meet fortnightly to make sure that everything we do considers our RAP. But we have co-chairs because at the moment we have 2 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff. We've got Todd and another staff, and it's not their role to reconcile with themselves. The way we work, and I really do, like Emma, love the word accomplice, because I really do think I'm Todd's accomplice. You should see us do our road trips, they're really quite scary. But it's about Todd sort of, Todd saying what we need, or Lisa saying this is what we think we need, and then my job's to put my big girl pants on and go and make sure it happens. And I don't, we can't put all of that burden on 2 members of our staff to keep saying, like, can we be thought of? It's every one of our jobs to make sure that happens. I went off the reservation. It's so unusual. Anyway, we started in 2019 with the Reflect Wrap, and really the Reflect Wrap is that process of starting the conversation around let's thinking about how we do things, what should we be doing, what should we be incorporating. It's the starting the process. The Innovate Wrap is really now about making sure that we've got the policies and procedures and systems and things in place to make sure that we are living the wrap. And when you get to the stretch wrap, it's making sure that we're doing the stuff. It's making sure that we've actually employing the people, and we're in terms of a health wrap, that we are improving the lives and health outcomes, and we're reporting back on that. So we're in the Innovate stage. We've put lots of new systems and processes in place, from making sure that, as I said earlier, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have a voice in their healthcare, making sure that any tender panels include an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person to be looking at the tenders. Our contracts are in the process of having a line put in all of them, making sure that, to encourage people to employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in delivering their services. Our contracts also have a requirement for all of our services to demonstrate that they have cultural competent services, so not just tick a box and say, yes, we have. They have to demonstrate that, and then we support that by funding cultural competency training across our whole region for primary care, so right across from all of our GPs, their front of house staff, and across to our service providers are also able to attach that. All of our staff, our own staff, have been through cultural competency training, and that's an annual event, and we're really trying to increase that awareness. So we've started with cultural awareness. Our last lot of training was around cultural safety training, and making sure that everything that we do and the decisions that we make are done in a culturally safe way. We've changed all of our acknowledgement of countries to acknowledge, so that everybody in our organisation knows the different countries that we operate on, and we operate on quite a number of different countries across our region. We ensure that we always have an acknowledgement or a welcome country to all of our meetings. If it's a major meeting or a staff meeting, we invite a local elder to come and welcome and explain to us what the importance of what we're doing to community. Each of our community advisory committees have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representation, and we're always trying to grow that. And our last update of our board, last year we invited we have 2 new board members, 2 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women have joined our board, which is really fantastic. So for us, it's really about living it every day. It's not like, something that happens once a week that we were talking about. It is every day. And it's the only way that we are going to be able to do our business well is by living our wrap and by doing what we've committed to do. We're going to do another Innovate Wrap this year, when we still feel we have a little way to go to bring everybody with us before we convince Todd that we're brave enough to do a stretch wrap on the next round. So that's where we're at.
So just to add, some of the other things that we've been doing is the shirts that Louise and I have on. We've changed our supplier So that now comes from a Indigenous-owned business. We make sure that if there's any events on, we source catering from an Indigenous business if they're available. As Louise said, we've updated our acknowledgement to countries. That now sits in all of our boardrooms. We've also got some local artwork that some of our staff members or previous staff members have done, and that hangs in our boardroom. And the larger version of this, if I do that, the larger version of that sits in both of our offices in the reception area. So that's the first thing. If you come to our office, that's the first thing that you'll see. So this piece of artwork was designed in conjunction with the staff at the time. So they held a workshop with We Are 24/7 Creative, who was engaged to design a piece of work particularly for our wrap. And that artwork that you can see on the screen actually tells the story of our PHN and the communities in which we work, and that story sits on our website, or at least it is on there. Yeah, good. So people can go and have a read of that story. But part of that process was the staff were engaged on that day, and they were able to have input around the colours that you see in that picture and the meaningful behind that, and talk about what it means to work and live in our region. So we're pretty proud of that piece of artwork that we use now just about on everything. As you can see on that slide, it is in also, there's a watermark in the background. It pretty much sits on all of our documents across the business as well, and the story behind that artwork sits alongside it in each of our offices, so people get an understanding of where that's at. We've also, with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health strategy that feeds into this wrap, we work with 5 Aboriginal medical services in our region, and each of those CEOs have endorsed the health strategy as well. So that's how we're sort of bringing our Aboriginal medical services in with what we're doing to make sure it's meeting their needs as well, and also the communities that we work in. So we still, as Louise said, we still have a long way to go, and there's a few things that we want to do before we move on to stretch, because I feel that's a big step, but we'll see how we go. And the other things we've done is reviewing all of our policies and procedures to make sure that there's nothing in there that will eliminate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from feeling discrimination at work or even working for us. And we've also developed an anti-discrimination policy that now sits within our policies and procedures as well. For me, I think it's I'm very privileged to work at the PHN. It's very well supported. Anything I do in my role is supported from the board right through the whole team at PHN, and it generally is something that is quite sort of a document that sits on a shelf and doesn't get looked at very often, but our wrap is quite visible, and it also features in our CEO's fortnightly newsletter. If there's something to add in there, there's a bit of a wrap update all the time, and having made some of these changes in the last few months that we've been working on this, it's something that we can be really proud of as a PHN. So thank you for allowing us to present today.
Thank you so much, Todd and Louise, and I think it's always really inspiring for all of us to hear the very different dimensions that each organisation is going through to look at how they implement the RAP. Sometimes as a RAP committee, what you really want to know is what's everyone else doing? How could we learn from their experiences? So thank you very much for sharing your journey to date, and we look forward to staying in touch and hearing more as that journey continues. We're getting close to the end of our session, but I'm wondering before we finish whether perhaps there's any questions to any of our panellists from the floor or perhaps online. I'm not sure if we've got any questions. Connor, do you want to let us know what?
I'll let you know, none yet.
Okay, great. Thanks. Does anybody in this group here in person have a question or a comment that they'd like to make before we move to close? Don't want to get in the way of a cup of tea or a lunch break. Okay, well, I guess the invitation is there for those online and in person. Please, we've got a break coming up, so take the chance to come up and chat to some of our presenters from today, or if there are any questions from those online, we can connect you with some of our presenters and panellists today. Normally at this point I'd hand over to our sponsor, Hester, to make some comments and I guess to tell you a little bit about their work and their connection with CheckUP. Unfortunately, Anastasia, our relationship manager at Hester, isn't able to be here today. So on your behalf, I would really like to acknowledge and thank Hester for their ongoing support of the Queensland Primary Health Network. We really do value their involvement, and to our partners at Hester, we hope we've made you proud today. I'm sure you would be very pleased and really wishing that you were involved in this discussion today, because I know that the topic of reconciliation, and particularly how we move forward and being a voice for our generations, is something that Hester values and would want to be involved in. So we thank Hester for their sponsorship and ongoing involvement in this network. I'd also like to thank Aaron, who welcomed us with an amazing didgeridoo performance. We didn't really get the chance to thank him even further, but again, I think that set the tone for today's meeting. I'd like to thank Kieran, Chilcott, Lynette, Ed, Auntie Rona, Auntie Rhonda, Emma, Louise and Todd and everyone who's joined us today. Thank you so much for being part of this event and for, I guess, for your honesty and for really sharing with us your, I guess, your insights and your advice. We really do value and appreciate that. And I'd like to thank the CheckUP team for their involvement as well. Please, we've got a lunch coming, so we'd really invite you to stay and network. But before I finish, I know a number of you would have seen the amazing job that Kieran Chilcott did as chairing our session today. If you'd like to see more of Kieran, he will be hosting our 25-year celebration, as he alluded to. We will be having an outreach forum on the 8th of September. You've got some material on your seats that tell you a little bit more about it. We have an outreach forum and then followed by a 25-year celebratory dinner that we'd love you to attend and be part of. So please, if you can, take the opportunity to read a bit more about that. I believe that the launch is happening soon.
The website for the two events is just live. You'll be the first people to see it. So it's checkup.org.au/25 years. You can register as of today.
Excellent. Great. And as I said, Kieran and a number of our other board directors and staff will be featuring in those events. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Please join us for some lunch and safe travels. And particularly to Auntie Rhonda, thank you so much for coming down, and we wish you safe travels back to the Torres Strait. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.